People often want to know, Rebecca, why don't you eat meat? And I used to give honest, thoughtful answers to that question. But over the past 10 years or so, I think it's just become so ridiculously obvious that there are a million good reasons to not eat meat that at this point, I'd rather just say, I don't know, why don't you eat shards of glass? It's like saying, hey, why do you take a shower every day? Why do you go to the dentist every 6 months? Why do you end all of your videos with a clip of indie? Like, some things are just obviously objectively good. When I first gave up meat 20 years ago, I'll admit that either I was less informed or the meat lobby had much more control over the narrative, or both. It was probably both. To the point where, in the face of meat eaters who were debating me about my own personal food choices, I would accept that debate and I would shrug and say, you know what, you're right. The evidence isn't all that overwhelming. It's just a personal choice I've made. But frankly, the evidence is overwhelming now for every one of the reasons that I originally stopped eating meat. Consuming meat is bad for my health, it's bad for the environment, and it's bad for the animals. I'll just point to the most recent study I happened to see on this topic. Earlier this year, researchers at UCLA compared 6 different diets, including the standard meat-heavy American diet and the fish and vegetable-heavy Mediterranean diet, to see which one had the smallest carbon footprint. Surprising absolutely no one, they found that diets with ruminants, like cows and sheep, were the worst for the planet, and vegan diets were the best, by a huge margin. And yes, even vegans who eat almonds, though to be fair to the anti-almond brigade, the study only looked at carbon footprint in total and not water usage specifically. Also, it's worth noting that this study was produced in partnership with a climate-friendly snack company, though the researchers say that that company had no input on the research, nor did they contribute any funding. The researchers have a really nice, non-judgmental conclusion that is probably appreciated by companies like climate-friendly snack companies. Moderate consumption of meats such as chicken, pork, and fish, in conjunction with an emphasis on locally grown fruits and vegetables, can be maintained without adversely affecting the planetary carbon footprint and with the added benefit of promoting good health. Thus, making simple substitutions within each individual's diet can be advertised as an effective approach to collectively lower the environmental impact in tandem with improving health and longevity. So yeah, they're not even saying you have to be vegan. Just making substitutions can help. Now, before I go any further, let me reassure those of you in the audience who eat meat who are worried that I am making a moral judgment about you. Yes, I am. You are monsters. Okay, I'm just kidding. You're not monsters, unless seen from the perspective of a pig with the emotional and intellectual capacity exceeding that of the average human 3-year-old. I don't want to get into a whole philosophical debate here, but people often take these conversations as personal indictments of their character. Like, how dare you suggest that something I grew up doing that is central to my being is immoral, and thus I am immoral, which doesn't really get us anywhere. Unfortunately, a lot of people think of eating meat as being a central part of their identity. So they respond really poorly to things like this entire video, I guess. For instance, consider Italy. Yes, the whole country. Okay, well, no, but the current far-right fascist government of Italy, which recently proposed a bill to ban lab-grown and other synthetic meats from being produced in the country in order to protect their food heritage, which is made up bullshit that is covering for the fact that this is just a populist government trying to appease a powerful agricultural lobby. It's telling because the agricultural industry here in the United States is also very powerful and would also be struggling without the government tipping the scales in the direction of meat. Without government subsidies, a pound of hamburger would cost $30. A $5 Big Mac would cost $13. But Meat is part of our identity. And so instead of subsidizing meat alternatives or subsidizing fruits and vegetables at a higher rate, we withhold that government funding, claim that it's just too expensive to reduce meat consumption, and we sometimes outright ban environmentally friendly alternatives like lab-grown meat and even flour made from insects, which Italy already banned last year. And instead of our government funding research on creating more meat alternatives, we leave it up to capitalism to fill a growing market, which is why you've been hearing about Mammoth meatballs. Sigh. Meatballs made with mammoth DNA created by Australian food startup. Wow, cool. I've always wanted to eat an extinct mammal. I'm basically Marlon Brando in The Freshman, which is a movie about the guy The Godfather was based on, running a dining club for rich people who want to eat endangered species, which I thought was a fever dream I had as a child until I was preparing for this video. And then I went searching for it and learned it was real. That's a real movie that exists. What's not real, sadly, is the mammoth meatball. I mean, there is a meatball and it is lab grown, but it's not really woolly mammoth. It's a sheep. It's a sheep ball. It's a sheep cell that was injected with mostly African elephant DNA, plus a single mammoth myoglobin, which is the protein that most mammals produce that gives their meat that like bloody, almost metallic irony tang. Irony tang? That's not you get what I'm saying. Then they multiplied that sheep cell until they had enough to roll into a little ball, which they then put on display in a museum. The entire thing is just a PR stunt. It's meant to draw attention to the startup that did it, because that's how science is done these days. And yes, if you can't tell, I do find it all quite exhausting. Because if our government cared about climate change, we could just pay researchers to make a tasty steak in the lab, and then we would subsidize the production and marketing of the steak to get it on people's dinner plates, while making new opportunities for the farmers who currently raise and kill the animals that we will be replacing. There would still be a market for those real animals. Lots of people are scared of foods they view as unnatural, and lots of other people have an irrational commitment to the idea of authenticity, which is why, for instance, the natural diamond industry is still alive and well, despite the fact that scientists can make perfect diamonds in a lab at a fraction of the price. We put them on drill bits and circular saws, for fuck's sake. We don't need to mine diamonds anymore. So, fine, I'm all about harm reduction. So let's let the true meat enjoyers pay a premium for something that everyone else will be eating, subsidized at a fraction of the cost, with hardly any negative impact on the planet. Probably still a negative impact on our health, let's be honest. I eat Impossible Whoppers. They're terrible for me. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? I mean, I'm dreaming here. We won't do that. But at least outside of Italy, we do have dozens of startups competing to develop the first commercially viable lab-grown meat. And regulators in the United States and Singapore are already clearing the way for this to be sold in stores. Once that's done and once production ramps up, costs will naturally drop, just like what we've seen happening with the fossil fuel industry responding to the dropping cost of alternative energy sources like solar. Big agriculture will fight hard to throw out roadblocks, but I honestly think that the moral arc is bending towards humanity eventually giving up meat. They can slow it down, but they can't stop it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.